My name is Marcus Thompson. The story I'm about to tell you will show how my life crumbled in one night and how I got the most perfect revenge afterwards. I remember how ordinary that night began. November 15th, 2023, Tuesday evening. I was coding in my home office in Boston, just like any other night. I'm 38 years old. I have a successful software company, and I've been married to Sarah for 12 years. We had a perfect life in our Victorian-style house on a quiet street in Beacon Hill. At least, that's what I thought. At exactly 8:47 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah told me the client meeting ran late and not to wait up for dinner. I said okay and told her to be careful. A completely normal conversation, the kind we'd had thousands of times over 12 years. Sarah was a marketing director. I developed software. We were both successful, both hard workers. Around 9:30 p.m., while going to the kitchen for water, I saw a taxi arriving at the end of our street through the window. Sarah got out of the taxi, but there was someone else with her, a tall, bearded man. And that man was kissing my wife, on the lips, passionately, the way she hadn't kissed me in 12 years. I'll never forget that moment. It wasn't time standing still. Quite the opposite. Everything accelerated. My heartbeat quickened. My mind began working with crystal clarity. But the strange thing was, I didn't get angry. No, I felt no anger at all. Instead, something very odd happened. I started calculating. It was as if my brain automatically switched to analysis mode. Because I'm Marcus Thompson and I solve problems. Whether it's a code bug or a life bug, I quietly closed the curtain and returned to my computer. But I wasn't coding anymore. I was making a mental plan, and the first step was simple. Wait, watch, and learn. But there was something I didn't know yet. This wasn't just an affair. This was something much bigger. The next morning when I went to the office, I had barely slept, but my mind was clear. Sarah acted like always, kissed me on the cheek, talked about her daily plans over breakfast, mentioned how the clients really pushed hard last night. Everything seemed normal, but nothing was normal anymore. When I arrived at my office, the first thing I did was lock my door. Then I opened my computer and got to the real work. Being a cybersecurity expert has its advantages. System access, data analysis, digital trail tracking. But I'd never thought about using this for my own life. I accessed Sarah's location history, Google timeline, phone carrier records, credit card transactions. The first findings made my stomach turn. The Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel, same duration, usually 3 to 4 hours. And these weren't just from last week. The records went back 3 months, every Tuesday and Thursday, between 6 and 10 p.m. In the credit card records, there were hotel bar expenses, sometimes room service orders, average spending of $347 each time. I calculated total $4,164. I was financing my own betrayal with my money. When my phone rang again, Sarah told me she'd be late that day too because of a brainstorming session for a new campaign. I said, of course, that I knew how dedicated she was to her work. My voice was perfectly natural. Then I began examining Sarah's message records, WhatsApp backups, iMessage synchronization, modern technology records, everything. And there I found it. Constant messaging with someone named David C. The first messages started from August, initially innocent discussions about marketing strategies and coffee meetings. But then it changed. Messages about meeting when I was busy, reminiscing about wonderful nights together, and then the real shock, conversations about my money, my company's worth, and how much she could get in a divorce. That's when everything changed. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated operation. I researched David Chen, According to his LinkedIn profile, he was a business consultant and strategy expert. But when I dug deeper, a darker picture emerged. David Chen specialized in getting involved with rich, married women and providing consulting during their divorce processes. He was a modern-day predator. That evening when I came home, Sarah was watching TV. She asked how my day was, as if nothing had happened. I said very busy and asked how her brainstorming went. She said very productive, that they developed new ideas. We were both lying. The difference was I knew what I was doing, but I hadn't learned the biggest shock yet. I started the next day with an even clearer mind, because during the night I'd realized this wasn't just Sarah's betrayal, but a professional exploitation plan. David Chen wasn't just a lover, he was a financial predator. And Sarah's messages show this was a systematic scheme to rob me. That morning, Sarah said she'd be home at normal time and suggested ordering pizza and watching a movie like we used to. I said it was a great idea, that we hadn't spent quality time like this in a while. After Sarah left, my first task was calling my lawyer, Robert Miller, a man I'd known and trusted for 20 years. He'd been with me both when founding the company and buying the house. I told him we needed to meet urgently about marriage problems and potential financial protection needs. That afternoon at Robert's office, I explained the situation, the affair, David Chen's predatory profile, the financial exploitation plans. Robert was experienced and unsurprised. Then he told me something that would change everything. He reminded me that 6 months ago, I'd come to him saying my wife was acting strange and asking what I could do to protect my assets. Back then, I'd thought of it just as a precaution. Robert asked if I'd implemented his suggestions from that time. I smiled and said I'd followed every single one. 6 months ago, when I noticed changes in Sarah's behavior, late arrivals, password-protected phones, distant attitudes, there was a feeling inside me, and I trust my feelings. With Robert's guidance, I'd converted my company to an offshore trust structure. Thomson Technology Solutions was now operated by a trust in the Cayman Islands. On paper, I looked like just an employee, but in reality, I had 100% control. We'd protected our house similarly. Ownership had been transferred to my father's name, but I had life rights. And the documents Sarah had signed, thinking they were just tax optimization and estate planning, she had completely believed it. Robert put the file on the table and explained that Sarah legally had no assets she could claim. House, company, accounts. None of them technically belonged to me, but I controlled all of them. The precautions I'd taken 6 months ago just in case had now become a perfect shield. Robert's advice was simple. Wait quietly, and when Sarah made her move, give her a very big surprise. That evening, Sarah was waiting with pizza boxes. She'd gotten margarita and pepperoni and picked one of my favorite action films. We really had a good time. Sarah was attentive, loving, like the old Sarah. If I didn't know what I'd seen, I could think we were truly happy. But now I was analyzing every move, wondering if this was genuine or part of her plan to keep me unsuspecting. When the movie ended, Sarah said she really missed moments like this. I agreed, and strangely, it was half true. That night I watched her sleep peacefully, showing no signs of guilt or worry. Either she was innocent and I was paranoid, or she was a perfect actress. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. The next week became my research week. While Sarah maintained her routine of work, late nights, and loving messages, I was quietly gathering evidence. Let me tell you something. Revenge is served cold, and I'm very patient. Thursday evening, when Sarah left for her meeting, I decided to follow her. Staying distant in Boston traffic was easy. I positioned myself at the Fairmont Copley Plaza parking entrance. Sarah arrived at 6:45 p.m., used valet parking, and entered the lobby. David Chen came at 7:10 p.m., a tall, bearded, handsome man matching his LinkedIn photo. I couldn't follow them into the restaurant since Sarah would recognize me, but I'd prepared for this. Technology is wonderful. I'd bought a telephoto lens and directional microphone, positioning myself at a cafe window across from the restaurant. Watching them was painful but necessary. Sarah was laughing, holding David's hand, looking happier than I'd ever seen her in our 12-year marriage. But the shocking part was their conversation, which I captured with the directional microphone. Sarah was saying how naive I was, how I didn't suspect anything. David asked about divorce and alimony. Sarah confidently explained we had no prenup, and she could claim half my company's stock since it grew during our marriage. When David asked about worth, she said the last valuation was $50 million, dollars, with half being her right. She mentioned our Beacon Hill house worth $2.3 million as joint property. David said she'd be rich, and Sarah responded that they'd be rich together. That's when I understood this wasn't just an affair. This was a systematic exploitation plan Sarah had been developing for months. I recorded everything, every word, every meeting, every lie. But the most shocking recording came another day. Sarah was talking to David on the phone, thinking she was private in our bathroom. Unknown to her, our house sound system automatically recorded phone conversations as a security measure I'd installed. In this conversation, Sarah mentioned talking to a lawyer who said I'd hidden most of my assets. She explained the company and house were protected in different structures, but her divorce lawyer claimed this hiding from spouse was illegal. David asked about timing, and Sarah said 6 to 8 months. But she'd ultimately get half of everything, maybe more since I'd deceived her. When I heard this, I actually laughed. Sarah knew I'd taken precautions, but didn't understand they were completely legal and impenetrable. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. By late November, my plan had crystallized. Sarah and David's scheme was simple. Get me to divorce court and take half my assets. They were calculating based on this assumption, but they had no idea I'd already made my moves. In my final meeting with Robert, all documents were ready. He commented on how scary it was to be so foresighted. I told him I wasn't crazy, just prepared. We reviewed the situation. 100% of my company was in the Cayman Islands Trust, with Sarah having no legal rights. The house was registered in my father's name, with me having life rights. Sarah had no ownership. All bank accounts were under the trust structure, with no access for Sarah. Retirement funds were transferred offshore. Art pieces, cars, valuables, all protected. In summary, Sarah could legally only take her personal belongings from this marriage. Robert asked if this was ethical. I explained that Sarah was planning to systematically exploit me with David Chen, targeting my financial situation through manipulation. I was just protecting myself, and this would be justice. In early December, Sarah's behavior changed dramatically. She became more loving and attentive, giving me massages, cooking my favorite meals, even suggesting a Vermont cabin getaway. I said it was a great idea, but I was too busy this month, maybe January. She said she could wait, but I saw urgency in her eyes. The planned timing had changed. That evening, while Sarah showered, David called. When I answered, he was surprised to hear my voice. I offered to take a message since Sarah was in the shower. He said it wasn't important, just business, and would call later. After hanging up, I smiled at the panic I'd heard in his voice. When Sarah came out, I mentioned David had called about business. Her face tensed briefly before she recovered, explaining he was providing consulting for a new company's marketing strategy. When I asked which campaign, she said it was complex for a new company. That night, while Sarah slept, I checked her phone. Messages between her and David showed panic about whether I'd gotten suspicious, with David saying they needed to accelerate their plan. When Sarah asked how fast, David said this week she should meet with the lawyer Monday to prepare papers. I understood time was up. Sarah was about to make her move. Now you'll see it's nothing. The next morning, I had 47 missed calls from Sarah, messages, voicemails, desperate attempts to reach me. I didn't answer any. Instead, I called Robert and told him it was done. When he asked about her reaction, I said very badly, but there was no going back. He informed me Sarah's lawyer had called wanting to negotiate a settlement, half the house, a small company share, and $500,000 cash. I laughed, knowing my obvious answer. Robert had already rejected it. That afternoon, returning to my office, I found Sarah waiting in the lobby. Security hadn't let her in, but there she sat. I'd never seen her in such condition. Makeup smeared, eyes swollen, hair disheveled. Sarah pleaded to talk, saying she understood she'd made a huge mistake, that David had manipulated her, and that she still loved me. I pointed out that we listened to recordings of her planning to sell me for money, which wasn't love. She claimed money didn't matter, and she just wanted me. When they thought it was over, I told Sarah I'd explain something and wanted her to listen carefully. Sitting beside her, I explained that 6 months ago, when her behavior started changing, I'd intuitively taken precautions because I knew her. After 12 years, I understood that when she felt at risk, she became aggressive. I revealed that 2 months before her relationship with David began, she'd started questioning our finances. Why we had so many accounts, why I'd opened offshore companies, why we'd transferred the house to my father. All these questions made me realize she was planning to leave me. David was just the catalyst, but the real plan had been in her head much earlier. I mentioned reading notes on her phone titled, "How to Get Maximum Share from Marcus," dated 3 weeks before meeting David. Her trembling hand showed she was caught. I stood up and explained this wasn't just about cheating. She'd been planning to exploit me for a long time, with David as the execution tool. That's why I felt no remorse. She'd chosen me as a target, and I was just protecting myself. Sarah pleaded for a solution, insisting she'd really made a mistake. I told her the solution was simple. Divorce papers would be filed tomorrow. She'd get nothing because she had nothing, and she shouldn't expect anything from David since the FBI was looking for him. I signaled security to escort her out for trespassing. As she was removed, Sarah shouted that it wasn't over and she had lawyers. I wished her good luck, telling her she'd need it. 3 months later, I won the divorce case. Sarah got nothing because she really had nothing to get. David Chen was arrested. FBI investigation revealed he'd scammed not just Sarah, but 12 different women in 5 years. He received an 8-year federal sentence. Sarah started using her maiden name again, moved to another city, and began working at a small marketing company. I never heard from her again. But my story doesn't end here. 6 months later, I sold our Beacon Hill house, too many memories. Instead, I bought a penthouse in Back Bay. More modern, less history. My company exploded because I could focus only on work. By end of 2024, our valuation rose to $75 million with acquisition offers from big tech companies. But here's the most important part. I hadn't used that offshore trust just to protect assets. I allocated 30% of company profits to a technology education program for underprivileged children, not as Sarah Thompson Education Scholarship, but as Marcus Thompson Technology Academy. We teach coding, cybersecurity, and software development to disadvantaged children. So far, 847 children have benefited. 12 found jobs at major tech companies. 23 started their own startups. This is my real revenge. While Sarah tried to destroy me, I emerged twice as strong and changed other people's lives. But when they thought it was over, something interesting happened last week. In a coffee shop, I overheard a young couple at the next table arguing. The woman was considering leaving her boring partner, who only talked about work, though his business was doing well and they had money. She said money wasn't everything and she wanted happiness. I noticed her smile at her phone, clearly a message from someone else. I approached them and asked if I could give advice. When they seemed surprised, I told them that if they weren't happy, they should be honest rather than cheat or lie. Just tell the truth and separate because both deserve that. I continued by warning that trying to manipulate and exploit someone financially could result in very unpleasant surprises. The woman's face turned red as I left the coffee shop, smiling that maybe they choose a more honest path. Here I am today on my penthouse balcony overlooking Boston Harbor, watching the city view with wine in hand and laptop on the table. I'm working on a new project, an AI-based relationship counseling app. Ironic, isn't it? A year ago, I thought my life was ruined, but I'd actually been reborn. After Sarah tried to destroy me, I learned the most important lesson. The best revenge is becoming a better person. She tried to make me poor. I became richer. She tried to leave me alone. I became stronger. She tried to destroy me. I changed more people's lives. Last month's Boston Globe headline read, "Tech entrepreneur Marcus Thompson donates $10 million to Education Trust." The photo showed me with children from our academy. I was truly happy, real happiness that Sarah never provided. You know what's strange? I'm not angry with Sarah anymore because she gave me the greatest gift, the opportunity to know myself. For 12 years trying to please her, I'd forgotten my own values. Because of her, I found my true personality. Last night I received a LinkedIn message from David Chen, writing from prison. He acknowledged his wrongs and thanked me for stopping him from scamming 12 more women he'd been planning to target. Reading this, I realized I hadn't just protected myself, but other women too. My phone vibrates with a new WhatsApp message from Jessica, who read my Boston Globe article. She was also cheated on and financially exploited by her husband, asking for advice. I smile and reply that everything is possible. First protect yourself, then justice comes. And that's how I told you the most perfect revenge story, not through shouting, screaming, or violence, but by being smarter, more prepared, and more powerful. Sarah's plan was to destroy me, but the result made me a better version of myself. Now, looking at nighttime Boston, I raise my glass and declare, that's how you take revenge silently, gentlemen. Cheers.